I was ordained in 1985, and obviously we're filming now in 2018. So after 30 odd years, you're a very different person. It was a very significant day, the beginning of my life as a deacon and then as a priest. And I think the biggest difference is that you begin to realise that being a priest is about having a relationship with people. And inevitably those situations and those relationships over the years change you as a person. You begin to understand at a deeper level what you receive on ordination as you begin to live it out. And obviously after 30 years you think and feel differently because that experience all comes together. I think most of us discover our vocation to the priesthood as it's a gradual realisation rather than a once-off event. You gradually begin to realise that you're moving in that direction, and you gradually begin to realise that you feel comfortable with that and you're aware of where you should be going.
At the Saviour's command and formed by divine teaching, we dare to say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. At the very dawn of creation, your Spirit breathed on the waters.
The Catholic tradition says that, or teaches, that the whole of life is a sacrament. So every encounter, whether it's an encounter like this, filming a documentary, or whether it's a specific encounter in church, is an encounter between God and the world, because Jesus became man, and so he sanctified through the incarnation everything. But in the Catholic tradition, worship is very important. So we have coloured vestments, we have incense, we have music, we have symbolism and ritual. And that's very important to me because I'm a person that needs to have my senses fed as well as just my mind. And so there's a sense when Catholic worship is offered that you're offering something more than just words. You're actually trying to give people a glimpse of where they could be and take them on a journey. And so all that rich symbolism is very important to me, I think, in bringing out the mystery of the church. I think it's a privilege, and just recently we're recording this just after Easter, and speaking to some refugees. They've shared their stories of leaving their homeland, often leaving their wives and close family, and what it does is it brings home that to some people the passion, suffering and rejection is very real, and it brings that home to you, that you are invited to share that because they trust you and they share that with you. So it's an incredibly powerful experience, and it's also very humbling, because sometimes you think that your own Christian journey has been relatively comfortable. I've lived in England all that time. I've never been persecuted for what I believe. Sometimes it's been difficult because people are indifferent, but you realise what some people go through and the way that you share that, and there's that sense of privilege, I think. In terms of regrets and doing things differently, I always envy people who at the end of their lives are able to say, oh, if I had my time again I would do everything exactly the same, because I have to be honest and say that I wouldn't do exactly the same things again. I would make some changes. But I don't know whether I would have been able to make those changes at the time, because it's only where I am now that shows up those changes. I think I would like to have taken more risks, and because I'm a very cautious person by nature. I think the best thing is definitely about being a parish priest is definitely the sense of belonging, especially when you've been somewhere as long as I have. 22 years is a long time. So you know families very well, you know people very well, you know the schools that you work in very well, you've been part of the community for a long time, and so you're actually part of the fabric of their lives, and that, especially for a single priest, gives us a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. Um, so that's the best thing, but then the worst thing is the obverse side of that, that you know you can feel trapped by people's expectations of you and constantly having to live up to those expectations. That can be difficult, and that can be a struggle to keep things going for the length of time, particularly that I've been in a parish. I think the fact that I'm, never married or, had a long-term relationship, I think that as you get older, you realise the consequences of that because you don't have your own family, and so you belong to the parish. But as you work towards retirement, you realise that you will not be taking the same things into retirement that other people will be taking into retirement, like family connections, and so that changes your expectations, and it changes what you can have from life, and sometimes trying to live up to the ideal is very difficult, because there's a phrase on the London Underground when you get off the tube, there's this phrase, isn't there, mind the gap. And I think over my years of being ordained that it's been a constant struggle to mind the gap between what you're supposed to be and what you actually are, and you're trying to live up to something which is very difficult, the ideal, because you know that there's a gap between you as a person and the ideal of what you have been given, the ideal of a priest. There's always a gap between those two things, and that's a constant struggle, really, because you're very aware of how often you don't you don't close that gap. I mean, when I came here, I didn't for a minute think that I would be here 20 years, and it's more than likely that I'll be here for the next 7 or 8 before I retire, which will take me up to almost 30 years. I never imagined that, but I have to say that All Saints has been everything that I've always wanted, so there's never been a reason to go anywhere else, because I've always wanted a town centre parish. I've always wanted a church in the tradition of All Saints, so in many ways I've had what I've always wanted.